So one of the biggest sort of myths out there was that I quit.
Well, that story has a backstory and then another story.
Yeah, it has a lot of backstories, um, which we'll go into, but just to, sort of address that, I don't think that there's anybody in their right mind that would quit a hit show that's paying them a good amount of money that they actually really enjoy working on, which was my deal. Like I enjoyed it.
Yeah, you did. You were very dedicated. You like to show up for stunt rehearsals a day early and do your wardrobe a week early. It was really annoying.
Well, I mean, Eilish was like so good.
You're prepared. You were overly prepared.
I like to be prepared. But sort of during that time period after the first season, when everybody sort of got acclimated, I think things obviously started to change and the show got a lot more attention and us girls got individual attention. And that may have caused some.
Yeah, I heard that. I mean, we've talked about that, but I never knew that because I wasn't the one doing the Maxim covers. I think I did one terrible cover and they gave me very big boobs. And I was like, who's she?
They did. I remember that cover.
It was stuff.
You went into the hospital
Hmm.
and that was a little bit of an issue.
I asked, it was funny. I don't know why they put me in a room with Jonathan Levin, of all people. It wasn't Jim, it wasn't Aaron. Well, Aaron had kind of was having his own health problems at that point, but it wasn't Jim and it wasn't Duke, who were by my bedside when I woke up from surgery. So it was interesting that when I had a problem after this all transpired and I wanted to discuss leaving the show and all my reasons why, they put me in a room with Jonathan Levin, which I don't know that I had seen since we went to network. And you had told me about your background with him, which is varied and interesting, and he obviously has a very fond spot, shall we say, for you. And I don't know why they chose him to do this meeting, but I can tell you that during the meeting where I said this is not the show I signed on to do, I hear that you're looking for other people, and it's not about the list of names. It's about, this was not a show that I wanted to do without Shannon. She didn't want to do it without me, therefore I don't want to do it without her, and that should be fairly clear. And he had tears in his eyes already because he could see I was getting upset, as you can hear me getting upset. And I said, why would you hire her again, just to fire her? And he said, we didn't mean to. And he said, but we've been backed into this corner. He said, we're basically in a position where it's one or the other. We were told that it's her or me, and Alyssa has threatened to sue us for a hostile workplace environment, which, because she went to the therapist or the mediator or the corporate mediator, whatever the heck his title is, she built a case for herself where she was documenting every time she felt uncomfortable on set and for whatever reason, whereas you and I refused to speak to him. So that's where the deck was stacked.
I always think that like when somebody does that, I would, as a producer, call them on it. And I know that that's a huge risk. And it was definitely one that they didn't want to take.
And what's funny is that by today's standard, it wouldn't even qualify because there were no on-set, brawls. There was no even like harsh words exchanged. It was all behind the scenes. It was all in a trailer. It was nothing that anybody or any of our guest stars ever noticed or noted. And, there's not a director that would not work with you again. There's not any one of our crew members that did not have a great time working with you. So by today's standards, it wouldn't fucking fly.
Right.
And I don't think being late as a teenager on a set called 90210 would fly for being fired either. Like it just doesn't make any sense anymore. There are people that actually behave badly and get away with it. And there are men that, abuse people, throw things, screaming fits, and get away with it. Like, I don't think people understand that never happened here. Unless you were there, no one understands that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I lived a year after that, sort of replaying
Everybody's getting paid the same amount. And that's not what they wanted to do. You know, like I said before, I ended up doing the most hours for the least pay because
Right.
I just didn't ask for raises. I didn't want more to be taken out of the budget. I didn't want to have no money for guest stars. Like I was producing then. I knew that we had to get rid of Brian for some episodes to afford Nick Lachey. But at the time when I had a 3-month-old baby and I'm doing more hours than anyone and people are being let out for baseball games, you know, I sat in my trailer and I was like, and I said to Jim and I said to Duke, I was like, I don't need to do this. I don't want to do this. This is the second time I don't want to do this. And I don't know how you expect me to pick up all the pieces and go home to a 3-month-old baby and not be ragged. Like it just wasn't fair. It just wasn't fair.
Yeah, because when I was gone, once I was gone, it really did fall completely on your shoulders. Because at least while I was there, it was on my shoulders, and I would share it with you because we had the same mindset about the show. But then once I got fired, it was all on you.
Yeah, you know, and it took, you know, the writers were good about letting me work through the process of going through the change and grieving your loss and then being awkward with Rose coming in. Yes, Prue and Paige, but I'm using their real life names because that's what I had to deal with. And, you know, I had said to Jonathan, it's not the show that I want to do. It's not the show I signed up for. And, you know, the conversation got to the point where he said, not just threatened to sue me, but said he would sue me and dock my wages if I worked anywhere else.
Right. I remember including being a bagger at a grocery store, they would still dock your wages.
Yeah. I said, well, that's because I started laughing, like through my tears. I started laughing and I was like, what does that even mean? He said, we will sue you for what we think we will have lost on the show because of your departure. And we will dock your wages to regain those numbers. And I said, well, what if I go to like Arizona and I bag groceries? He goes, we will dock your wages. It really was like, suddenly I'm married to the mob. They forced me to go back to a show that I wanted nothing to do with. And it was very emotional for me. And it was very emotional for both of us. And you couldn't understand how I couldn't do anything. And frankly, neither did I, because my voice meant nothing. And that's what was so funny to me. I was like, you're telling me I'm so valuable that you can't do the show without me, but yet my voice and my feelings and my thoughts mean nothing. It was a terribly uncomfortable situation for me. And obviously, you saying I'm not going to do the show without her in the beginning to network and me saying it clearly didn't have the same effect. You know, and so it was terribly awkward for me. You know, Brian and she were dating at the time when this all went down, which to me, us being completely oblivious to me was the worst part, where it was like all sort of part of this plan that was happening and unfolding through over months. It was, you know, months of that year. And you were dating Julian, so you guys were off in that world. And then Brian was off with Alyssa. He just recently, it was about a year ago in France, we were on stage at a panel that was filled with many, many people. And he just kind of paused. Like he looked at me like he forgot something. And I kind of looked at him like, what? What's the problem? Why are you looking at me like that? And he just looked at me while someone was asking a question and just went, I'm so sorry. And I was like, sorry for what? I was like, are you going somewhere? What's happening? He just shook his head and he goes, I'm so sorry. Because we had talked about it a little on stage without talking about it, because still no one was allowed to talk about it. And we got off stage and he just looked at me and said, I'm so sorry. That must have been a terrible time for you. That's all I have to say.